Let me begin with a curious little observation about human nature. If you truly want to disturb someone who expects a reaction from you, do absolutely nothing. No argument, no explanation, no long emotional paragraph, just silence. Now I know what you're thinking, but that's impossible. If someone insults me, lies about me, provokes me, surely I must respond. Ah, that is exactly the trap. You see, most people believe power comes from reacting quickly, defending themselves loudly, and proving their point with endless explanations. But life has taught me a far more amusing truth. The person who reacts the least usually controls the entire situation. And if you have ever been pulled into a pointless argument, a draining relationship, or a ridiculous online debate that somehow lasted 3 hours longer than it should have, then you already know this lesson the hard way. Let's be honest for a moment. Some people seem to specialize in provoking reactions. They say the wrong thing at the wrong time. They twist your words. They push emotional buttons like a child pressing elevator buttons. And before you know it, you're defending yourself like a lawyer in a courtroom that never adjourns. You explain, you clarify, you try to make them understand. But strangely, the more you explain, the more exhausted you become, and the more entertained they seem. If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. Many intelligent, kind-hearted people fall into this trap because they assume everyone else is operating with the same sincerity they are. But not everyone wants understanding. Some people want reaction. Reaction is their fuel. Reaction is their entertainment. Reaction is their sense of control. So today, I want to share 7 subtle psychological strategies that will change how you deal with difficult people forever. Not through force, not through manipulation, but through something far more powerful: emotional non-participation. Let's begin with the first trick, and it is wonderfully simple. Never react immediately. When someone says something provocative, the human brain wants to respond instantly. It's almost automatic. Your heart beats faster. Your mind starts composing speeches worthy of a dramatic courtroom movie. But here's the secret. Emotion travels faster than wisdom. If you react immediately, you are not responding from clarity. You are responding from emotional momentum. And emotional momentum rarely leads anywhere useful. Instead, pause, silence, confuses people who expect chaos. If someone throws a spark into a room and the room refuses to ignite, the spark becomes rather useless. The pause alone changes the energy of the interaction. And quite often, the person provoking you suddenly loses confidence in their performance. Now let's move to the second trick. Never over-explain yourself. This one is especially important for thoughtful people. You see, when someone misunderstands you, the natural instinct is to explain everything thoroughly. You explain your intentions. You explain your reasoning. You explain what you meant, what you didn't mean, and sometimes what you had for breakfast that morning just for extra context. But here's the funny thing. People who genuinely want to understand you usually need very little explanation. People who don't want to understand you will never find your explanation satisfactory. You could write a 500-page autobiography and they would still say, "Yes, but that's not what I meant." Over-explaining gives away your power. It quietly says, "Please approve of my reasoning." But when you calmly state your position once and leave it there, something interesting happens. You signal certainty. Certainty is surprisingly persuasive. Now, the third trick may sound mischievous, but it works beautifully. Ignore minor provocations. Some individuals test boundaries the way a scientist tests chemicals in a laboratory. They say something slightly irritating, then they watch. If you react, they learn something very important. They have discovered your button, and human beings are endlessly fascinated by buttons. So they press it again tomorrow, and again next week. And soon, you find yourself starring in a repetitive drama you never auditioned for. Ignoring small provocations is not weakness. It is strategic boredom. When a behavior produces no reaction, it becomes incredibly uninteresting to repeat. Even the most dramatic personalities eventually lose enthusiasm when their audience refuses to clap. The fourth trick is my personal favorite. Respond with calm humor. This is devastatingly effective. When someone expects anger and receives amusement instead, the psychological script collapses completely. Imagine someone criticizing you harshly. They expect defensiveness, but instead, you smile and say something lighthearted. Suddenly, the entire emotional structure they built evaporates. Humor breaks tension faster than argument ever could. It also protects your inner peace. And let's be honest, life becomes far more entertaining when you treat unnecessary drama like a slightly ridiculous theater performance. Now, here is the fifth trick. Do not chase validation. Many conflicts continue far longer than necessary because one person desperately wants the other person to admit they were wrong. We want acknowledgement. We want fairness. We want justice. And occasionally we want an apology that includes dramatic music and a spotlight. But here's a quiet truth. Some people are psychologically incapable of admitting they were wrong, not because you lack evidence, but because their ego simply refuses to cooperate. Waiting for validation from such people is like waiting for a cat to suddenly bark like a dog. You may wait a very long time. Freedom arrives the moment you realize you do not need their agreement to maintain your peace. Your clarity is enough. Now, the sixth trick is something many people struggle with. Silence is often the most powerful answer. We have been taught that silence means defeat. But in reality, silence often means discipline. Imagine someone sending a long message full of accusations or emotional drama. The natural temptation is to respond point by point, paragraph by paragraph. But when you step back and choose silence, you remove yourself from the emotional tug-of-war. You decline the invitation to chaos, and chaos cannot continue without participants. Silence also forces people to sit with their own words. Sometimes they even realize how unreasonable they sounded. Not always, but often enough to make silence worthwhile. Finally, the seventh trick. Master the art of emotional detachment. This does not mean you become cold or uncaring. It simply means you stop allowing other people's moods to control your inner state. Think of your emotional energy like a bank account. Every argument, every unnecessary